Thank you for joining KenCrest for a fireside chat with the twin sister docs. My name is Marian Baldini, and I'm the CEO and president of KenCrest. KenCrest was founded in 1905, right around the time of the Spanish pandemic. KenCrest provides services to children and families in Philadelphia and provides supports for adults with intellectual disabilities in Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. We serve over 12,000 individuals each year, and we have a wonderful staff of 2,100 people. It is an honor to host a discussion today on the COVID-19 vaccine with the twin sister docs, Dr. McDonald and Dr. Wardlow. As a human service provider, we have a lot of questions about the vaccine, and we want to provide trusted and accurate information to our staff, clients, and their families. But the news and social media have carried some information which is inaccurate about the vaccine, and we want to explore the facts so that everyone will make the very best decision. That being said, I'm excited to introduce Dr. McDonald and Dr. Wardlow, also known as the Twin Sister Docs. The Twin Sister Docs were born and raised in North Philadelphia in a neighborhood known as the North Philly Badlands. The sisters grew up with loving parents who were encouraged to take their studies seriously and hope for a better world. Believing that education would even the playing field and open doors, their parents stressed the importance of academic rigor. And it was the support of their parents that pushed the sisters to persevere through the hurdles of racism and inequity in the field of higher education. In poverty-stricken Philadelphia, communities are riddled with easily treatable ailments, but due to a long history of racism and bias among healthcare providers, individuals in these communities are often wary of physicians. The twins created the Twin Sister Docs platform to help African American and Puerto Rican folks, in particular, to treat these ailments, educate the community on health options, and be a voice locally and nationally to address the specific needs of minority communities. They have been working in Philadelphia and surrounding communities for the last 20 plus years, and it is their mission to practice what they preach in these communities where others have not. They were two of the first doctors volunteering and partnering with Black Doctor COVID-19 Consortium in Philadelphia, and we are so grateful for their voices, their advocacy, and their commitment to public health. All right, so Dr. McDonald and Dr. Wardlow, I am so impressed by your work, and really curious. At KenCrest, we talk about our why. Like personally, what is our passion that we bring to our work? So my first question for both of you is, what is your why? Why are you doing what you do?
So our why is we consider ourselves twin sister docs, and our why is really based on the mantra of three T's. So it's based on trust, translate, and transform. And really, what that means is that we are trusted messengers, and we want to bring trusted information to the community, accurate information, and that in turns allows people to take action in their health and advocate for their health. And then that translates or transforms into um, better outcomes for everyone in general. So we really want to improve the outcomes of everyone's health in general, and we want to do it in the areas that we came from. We're from the local area, and we want in general our area to do well and further on nationally also. So we want to help as many people as we can. So that's really our why, Dr. Wardlaw.
Yes, and yet another part of our why is the fact that our maternal grandmother died of breast cancer at the age of 53. And as we all know, that breast cancer is diagnosed at an early stage, there's a good chance of a high survival rate. However, due to lack of access to quality care and also due to a mistrust in the healthcare system, my grandmother was not afforded that early detection, and thus she lost out on another, maybe possibly another 30 years of her life. So that was the driving force for me to go into the medical career. And it also drives Dr. McDonald and I to continue to do what we do to try to make sure that we are addressing healthcare disparities and working in communities that need it the most.
Well, this is such an exciting connection. I was just telling Lauren that in my master's program for health administration, we had to do a public health class. And my public health project was on breast cancer, specifically about Black women. So our group was given permission by the Human Rights Committee at an agency to look at the attitudes about breast cancer among Black women versus white women.
Mhm.
And we found that those health disparities in the Black community had led to women believing that cancer could not be cured. So we actually were able to launch a campaign in our organization to raise awareness about what breast cancer really is. And that if you do detect it early, you can be cured, but you can understand how, after many, many years of injustice, people believed that it could not be treated. So it's really exciting that we have even a little personal connection on this public health story, and really helping our folks in the community, our staff, are really very interested in hearing from you and learning from you what can help them transform their lives. So let's dig into COVID,
Yes.
a big hot topic. So, how long does this vaccine last? Is one of the most popular questions we're hearing. So tell us a little bit about the vaccine. Do you want me to pick a doctor, or you guys work this out? I don't know.
We tend to work it out.
Okay, all right. I'm not getting in between sisters. I'm the oldest of 9 children. I don't mess with that.
Yes, absolutely. So with the COVID vaccine, there are still, some unknowns, and we do not know of the duration of the immunity that will be provided, that will allow us protection from COVID. However, we do know that it does provide, your body provides natural protection if you've been exposed to COVID. We don't know how long that natural protection lasts either. And with the vaccine, again, we have to watch the data. We have to watch the numbers. We just started to administer the vaccine earlier in the year to the people who participated in the trials. And then also, we just started vaccinating in December to the healthcare workers. So we have to watch the data. So unfortunately, we do not have the number. We can't give a specific number to that, but again, we will continue to watch the data and see how long this immunity actually lasts. What that could mean is that if it doesn't last as long as we would like it to, we may have to revaccinate, and we do that with other vaccines as well. So we will be able to address that issue if that does occur.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest questions also is about safety. So who is the vaccine safe for, and who is it not safe for?
So just to answer the first question about whether or not the vaccine is safe.
Mhm.
So, in order to prove that a vaccine has to be two things before it can be rolled out to any large population. It has to be proven to be effective, and it has to be proven to be safe. Those two things must occur for a vaccine to be rolled out. So, it has to go through clinical trials. And once it goes through the clinical trials, at that point, they can determine who the vaccine is safe for. At this point, the clinical trials have shown that the vaccine is safe, depending on the vaccine, is safe for anyone ages 16 and above. So, and when they do the studies, they'll look and they'll say, okay, well, once they do the studies on the population groups, then they can determine which group is likely to have problems with it, which group is not likely to have problems with it. So at the current time, right now, anyone over 16 or 18, depending on the particular vaccine, is eligible to get the vaccine. Now, if you have if you're immunocompromised, if you have underlying medical conditions, you want to specifically speak with your doctor about that. But in general, overall, the population, everyone is being recommended to get the vaccine.
And I will also add to that pregnant women as well. This question comes up a lot. Should pregnant women get the vaccine? And even though pregnant women weren't included in the study, because we traditionally don't do studies on pregnant women or women who are expecting children, it is recommended. It has been generally recommended, and again, everyone should talk to their OB about this and their doctor. It has been recommended that because the effects of COVID are severe on pregnant women, and they can lead to hospitalizations in the ICU, ventilations, death, preterm labor. It has been determined that the benefits of the vaccine definitely outweigh the risk. And again, everybody should have that specific conversation. But again, it has been recommended that pregnant women can indeed get the vaccine and have that conversation.
Most of us don't think too much about vaccines when we're adults. So how does a vaccine really work? I mean, it's not like a force field or anything, right?
Great question. Great question. So your immune system works off of a memory. So basically, your immune system has to see a particular virus or disease process before it can develop antibodies. And once you develop antibodies, then you're essentially considered immune because your antibodies is your defense mechanism. So essentially, what the vaccine does is that the vaccine is generated in a laboratory and it allows your body to actually see the blueprint of a disease process without actually getting the disease. So the vaccine triggers your immune system to create the antibodies against this. So for this talk for COVID, so then when you're exposed to COVID-19, then you can fight it off right away. Without a vaccine, if you're exposed to COVID-19 and you contract the disease, your immune system may figure it out over a couple of days or a couple of weeks how to fight it off. But during that time while it's trying to fight it off, you could become severely ill, but you could also die from it. So the purpose of the vaccine is to build your immune system without you actually getting the disease first.
So, when you meet with your patients, what is their biggest worry, and what do you say to them to help them say yes to the vaccine?
So for me, as a family medicine physician, and I see by and far most of my population consists of adult patients.
Mhm.
Um, my patients are concerned about the safety of the vaccine, and they're concerned about um, the government being involved with the distribution of the vaccine and things of that nature. And historically, as African Americans, we have reason, historically and currently, we have valid reasons to have some reservations with this vaccine. There have been some events that have occurred in history where African Americans did not receive the treatment they deserved. One of the incidents that you hear or you've been hearing regularly about is the Tuskegee experiment, where gentlemen who had these syphilis disease, when penicillin, which is the effective treatment for syphilis, became readily available, these gentlemen they were not offered that treatment. And this study went on for up until 1972. That was not too long ago. So again, some unethical things that have been done. Henrietta Lacks, her cervical cancer cells have been used to advance medical technology and medical techniques, and her family was not aware that her cells are being used without their consent, without their knowledge, without their permission. They didn't get any financial gain from it. Not that they were looking for that, but that's a part of this, these things that have been done unethically. Then we have issues, of course, with systemic racism, implicit bias. Unfortunately, as African American females, um, we are, 3 times as likely to die giving birth to children because of those things. So those issues exist, and these issues have to be addressed. However, what I explain to my patients is we do not want the past and some things that are going on in the present to predict our present right now and our future, right? Because we have a vaccine that is in place that will potentially prevent us from dying from COVID. African Americans are dying at a rate of almost 3 times that of Caucasians. We have to do something to change that narrative. And the vaccine is the next reasonable approach to do that, in addition to the standard recommendations that have been offered: the hand washing, the social distancing, the mask wearing. So, again, unfortunately, despite us doing that, well, some of us doing that, we still have 400,000 deaths in the United States. I mean, they're predicting a 500,000 people to be dead from this virus over the next couple of weeks. So we have to do something to change that narrative. And we understand. We understand that there is some mistrust. We understand that there's some hesitation. However, we do not want that to allow us to become a statistic today when there is a preventive measure that is in place to reduce that risk.
And if I could piggyback on that, so I'm a general pediatrician. I've been talking vaccines for 20 years. So parents come in every day. I have the discussion about vaccines with my parents, and my main message to the parents are: one, vaccines are generally safe. They are tried and true. Vaccines have been rolled out since polio. That was in the 1950s, and they have we've been able to get rid of disease processes that were deadly to patients with vaccines. And with vaccines, there are always, potential side effects. You could have fever, soreness at the site. You could have some, some fatigue, some muscle aches. However, the benefits of the vaccine must outweigh the risk of of the disease process and the side effects. So we know that we would rather you have some headache for a day or so, some fatigue, some arm soreness, some fever. We'd rather you have that from the vaccine than you ending up on a ventilator, having a stroke, having a heart attack from or dying from the actual disease itself. So those are the discussions that I have with my patients.
And one other, I'm sorry, one other thing, Marion, I also recommend I'd say, I reiterate to my patients, I wouldn't recommend anything to my patient population that I would not recommend to myself and or my family members. And I have, in fact, had the COVID vaccine. I had my second dose 2 days ago. So again, I would not recommend anything to the general population that I'm not recommending for myself and or family members.
I think I saw the two of you get your vaccine shots on that.
Yes.
Yes.
Nice pictures. I had
Yes.
mine last week. My husband had his last week. I'm very concerned because I get a feed from the KFF Foundation every day, and every morning this week I've been getting the alerts that more people of color are not accepting the vaccines, which really, really worries me because it feels to me like that injustice is going to carry on. So, what role does the vaccine play in ending the injustices that have happened so far in our lives?
So go ahead, Dr. McDonald.
So the vaccine, we want to try to end this pandemic, as Dr. Warlaw just went over the numbers. And
Right.
even if we take away the big numbers that we see on the screen, each individual person that's on this Zoom, if you ask them, do you know someone who's had COVID, or do you know someone who's died from COVID?
Right.
We all can answer that question yes at this point in time. So this disease process is not on another continent, is not in another country, it's not across the world. It is in our homes, it is in our families, it is at our jobs. So, the pandemic is here, and it is killing us, especially African Americans, at disproportionate rates. So now that the vaccine is out, we just don't want to wait and see what happens at this point, because nothing else has really worked to the point to get us on the other side of this pandemic. So once this vaccine, well, it is available now, I implore people to discuss it with your physician, discuss it with someone that you trust and who understands the data from the trials, who can review it with you so that you can feel comfortable with getting the vaccine. Because at this point, while we've tried the hand washing, we've tried the social distancing, we tried the mask wearing, it certainly has probably prevented the numbers from being at 700, 800,000. But we don't want to keep going up. So we definitely want to consider the vaccine.
So you're not recommending people wait like 6 months, a year, whatever, to get the vaccine?
Uh, we're not recommending that because uh, continued delaying the delayed receipt of the vaccine and or continued denial, it will just lead to continued death and destruction of our communities. And again, there are many people do recover from COVID. However, there are long-term effects. We have what we call long haulers. It can cause long-term effects on your lungs, long-term effects on your heart, long-term effects on your memory, can cause the long-term effects from strokes, things of that nature. So continue to delay getting the vaccine and or continue to deny it in general, again, um, it just leads to further destruction in our communities. And this is a community effort because we do need approximately 75 to 80% of the population to receive the vaccination so that we can reach this herd immunity so that we can stop the spread of the virus.
And I certainly, I echo what Dr. Warlaw says. We don't recommend waiting. And for the last 10 months, since March, when we officially went to shutdown mode, we've had to shut down schools. We've had to shut down sporting events. We've had to shut down churches. We've had to shut down restaurants. Everything that we did in 2019, we will not be able to get back to without a virus. And if we take the wait and see approach, millions, hundreds of thousands more people will die. So we definitely don't recommend waiting at this point because the vaccine has shown and it continues to show us how deadly this virus is. The virus is predicted to kill 500,000 people in the United States alone by February. So if we continue to wait, those dire numbers will just continue to go up and up and up and up and up.
So one of the things that I always like to ask is, um, if the person that you love the most in your life came to you and said, "Would you get the vaccine?" What would you say?
I would say
Absolutely.
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 Again, the risks and side effects of the vaccine are far less significant than the complications of coronavirus. I would absolutely recommend it.
Some people think that the vaccine will get in your body and will change your body in some way. What does the vaccine do when it gets into your body?
So the vaccine technology that is being used for the coronavirus is messenger RNA vaccine, RNA technology. And basically, what that does is it gives the body instructions on how to make the spike protein, which is the protein that the coronavirus is made of. It gives the body's instructions on how to make the spike protein so then that the body's immune system cells can produce its own antibodies. And once it can produce its own antibodies to the spike protein, if it's exposed to the actual spike protein from coronavirus, your body already has a defense mechanism in place to mount an immune response to provide protection. Now, when this messenger RNA is introduced to the body, it is introduced into the cells. However, it does not enter the nucleus of the cells. So the nucleus stores the DNA. And we hear a lot of stories about, oh, is it going to affect our DNA? Is it going to change our DNA? No, it doesn't alter the DNA at all. And the mRNA disintegrates after a few days. So it does not stay in the body. It just gives the body enough time to develop antibodies so that if it sees that spike protein of the coronavirus, it's prepared to act. So no, it does not affect your body makeup. It does not affect your DNA. It does not change your DNA. We're not the vaccine is not giving you COVID when the vaccine is administered. This is not a vaccine where a small amount of the inactivated form of the virus is put into your body. This is not that type of vaccine. And also with messenger RNA, some people are under the pretenses that this technology just started last year with COVID in 2019. Messenger RNA technology has been around for years. So COVID-19 is SARS-CoV-2. There was a SARS-CoV-1 outbreak back in the early 2000s. And that is when scientists, started to work on this messenger RNA technology to fight against COVID. So the technology is not new in 2019. And many people ask, well, how could the vaccine be produced that quickly? So the technology, scientists have been working on that technology for years.
And if I could piggyback on what Dr. Wardlaw said, people question, well, why was the vaccine made so quickly and it take years to make vaccines? So one, as Dr. Wardlaw said, the technology has been out since the early 2000s. But two, typically when vaccines are going into clinical trials, the pharmaceutical companies have to fund the trials. But when COVID came along, the government stepped in and provided funding. So, and instead of the trials going in consecutive order, it went concurrently. So a lot of steps were done at the same time, but no safety measures were cut out. Corners were cut. It was just that the funding allowed certain steps to happen at the same time versus one after the other, one after another. So those two things alone allowed the vaccine to be developed at what people considered a quicker rate.
That
And
was
the other thing is too is that over years technology improved. So vaccine technology has improved. So it's not going to take us as long to make a vaccine as it did, 20, 30 years ago.
right, which is good news,
Mhm.
really,
Absolutely.
because we need it
Yes.
right now.
Yes.
I was impressed by the vaccine hearings the FDA held because they're actually public. So I was actually able
Absolutely.
to sit through some of them. And I learned that the vaccine development actually started in January when the disease was first spotted and given to the government by China. So Moderna started long before we even knew there was a pandemic.
Mhm.
So it's been in development a little longer than the news would tell us, I think.
Yes,
Absolutely.
and there's a fabulous doctor. Her name is Dr. Kizmikia Corbett, and she was one of the lead investigators at Moderna. Who I mean, she worked with Moderna. She was part of the NIH, Dr. Fauci's team, to help get the vaccine um, moving forward. So, as to your point, once we learned the genome status of COVID-2, they were able to move forward with developing the vaccine.
So, as a pediatrician, Dr. McDonald, you run into families who are not first in line for new vaccines, like the HPV vaccine, for example. And every time a new one comes out, there's some of us who get in the front of the line and some of us who get in the back of the line. So, in this case of COVID, how do we get people to the front of the line?
What I tell people with the case of COVID is so the likelihood of your child seeing HPV is much lower than your child seeing COVID at this point in time. So I understand the trepidation or the nervousness when a new vaccine comes out, but I always reassure people that it has been studied. Again, it has been proven to be safe and effective. But right now, the numbers for COVID is so devastating. We don't want to continue to wait.
So, once someone gets, let's say, their second dose of Moderna or Pfizer, when can they take off their mask? When can they go and visit their grandmother?
Excellent question. So I received my second dose of my vaccine 2 days ago, and I still have to wear my mask. I still have to social distance. I still have to avoid small and large gatherings, the frequent hand washing, because not everyone is vaccinated. We have not met that herd immunity that we talked about. We need approximately 70 to 80% of the population to be vaccinated to slow the spread effectively of this virus. So we still have to do all of these recommendations so that we can get ahead of it. The vaccine, we just started the rollout. There has been some interruptions with the rollout, but hopefully that will we will have that addressed over the next couple of weeks. But again, we are just making sure that we still have to do all of these um, guidelines, follow all these guidelines, because not everyone, unfortunately, is vaccinated yet. So the plan hopefully is to try to get everyone vaccinated by June. So maybe we can start to come out of the mask, maybe by um, mid end of the summer. And those are just guesstimations, but we should plan to still be in these masks throughout the summer, unfortunately.
All right.
Absolutely. And if
Yeah.
and if and just to echo what Dr. Warlaw saying, so the purpose of the vaccine is not going to necessarily prevent the transmission. The goal is to prevent you from sick, getting extremely sick or dying from the disease if you're exposed to it. So yes, you absolutely will still need to wear your masks and hand wash and social distance for the foreseeable future.
And we do that with the flu. We offer a flu vaccine, and some people will still get a case of the flu, but it will not be a severe case that will cause them to develop severe respiratory distress or a severe pneumonia, have to require a ventilator, and/or some people experience death. So again, the vaccine, some people will still unfortunately contract COVID after getting the vaccine. Unfortunately, however, it will be a much less severe case and um, won't allow for death to occur.
And as we continue to see such severe cases, what happens is this stresses our healthcare system. And what do we mean by does it stress our healthcare system? I don't ever recall a time in my 20-year career where people were counting the number of ventilators or ICU beds that they had because the hospital was becoming overwhelmed. And when the hospital becomes overwhelmed with COVID patients, you don't want people to have to decide who's going to be likely to survive, and that's how you're going to determine who's going to get the ventilator that's available. Or two, people go into the hospital with a heart attack or a stroke or a car accident. They're not getting proper treatment at the proper time because the hospital is just so overwhelmed from treating severely ill COVID patients. So that's another reason why we want to get this vaccine rolled out, because we need to decrease the severe disease process that comes out of people who get really sick with COVID.
I've also heard that people have put off getting health care for things because they're afraid of interacting in a healthcare setting because of COVID. And that can also lead to complications for other conditions that people may have because they're afraid of the disease.
Absolutely. We have seen that phenomenon as well. And unfortunately, when we began to hear about COVID in early last year, we were caught off guard. The health system was caught off guard, and we had to pivot quickly and try to figure out how to deal with this virus. And initially, it was that people shouldn't report to the hospital except for emergencies, and they delayed preventive studies and things of that nature. However, no one expected COVID to last this long, and now we have to live within the pandemic. So we are encouraging our patients to make sure you follow up with your doctor, your primary care doctor. Make sure you follow up and get your preventive studies, your colonoscopies, your mammograms, making sure you're getting your cervical cancer checks, making sure that you are getting these things done, because what we don't want to do is come out of the pandemic at the end of the year and then we have major medical conditions that we could have addressed earlier on. And the hospitals and medical offices have taken extra precautions to make sure that they're screening patients and making sure they're using separate entrances and making sure that there aren't large amounts of patients in any given area at one time to decrease the risk of exposure. So we definitely should be making sure that we are attending to our doctor's appointment and taking care of our health. Because the other thing COVID has shown us is that people who have chronic medical illnesses that aren't well controlled, they're at higher risk for significant complications and or death. So we have to make sure we're addressing these issues.
And from a pediatrician standpoint, we want your children to come in for your routine checkups because we're monitoring their physical development, their mental development. We want to make sure they're getting their vaccines because, as Dr. Warlock mentioned, the last thing we need is to finally come get on the other side of the COVID pandemic and have a measles outbreak or whooping cough outbreak. So we want people to make sure that they're continuing their visits. And as a pediatrician, we do what we call well child checks. A well child check is to make sure they're growing properly, developing appropriately, but they're also in place to catch little problems before they become big problems.
Well, one
So
thing,
that's why it's important to try to keep up with your appointments. And if you have a question about whether or not you should go, give your doctor a call. Find out what their protocols are at their office because we've all had to make adjustments at our office to try to keep our patients safe and our staff safe.
yeah, we really count on pediatricians. I don't know if you've heard this about KenCrest, but we are an early intervention provider.
Mhm.
And we've noticed that in the early intervention community, we have fewer referrals. And we think it's probably because people are not being screened by their pediatricians.
Mhm.
And what early intervention does, which you as physicians would know, is it helps children get that developmental little boost. Sometimes all they need is a little bit of help now instead of having a big problem later. So those well child checks are so important. And some of those early screenings that you talk about are the things that are going to catch a disease when it's still very treatable and curable. But if people don't go, you can't find it. So
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And I also would like to say that some people are, and I hear this from my patients on a regular basis. Doc, I don't want to go to the emergency room. I don't want to get COVID. I said, listen, if there's a true emergency, you have to go to the emergency room. We don't want you suffering at home from a stroke or suffering at home from a heart attack or even dying at home from a heart attack or a stroke or from your blood sugars being too high or because your lung disease is out of control and you can't breathe. We need people who are having true medical emergencies still need to present to the emergency room to have emergency treatment. Absolutely. We need people to do that.
well, I want to thank you both for your advice and counsel, and also for your spirit of justice in the community. I mean, it's just wonderful to know that you're out there. It's kind of fun to watch the two of you as sisters. I'm the oldest of nine, so I'm sure if my sister was here, you'd be having some fun with her. She's a mechanic, so it's completely different, but we need those guys too, and they need their vaccinations as well because they make sure that our washers are running and our dryers are working.
So,
Absolutely.
and I'm so glad that you said that because I always use a mechanic as an example. So what I tell what I tell my patients and my families is, if you don't understand what I'm saying to you, please ask me to clarify it.
Right,
Because if you walk out of my office and you don't know why you should be doing something, you're less likely to follow through with it. And I haven't done my job.
right.
So sometimes we may start talking and we may start using big words. Stop us and say, I don't understand. If I go to a mechanic to say my car's not working and she starts to tell me about the carburetor and the alternator and the transmission, I just want to know, can I drive my car? Can you fix it? I just need it very simple. So same thing when you talk to your doctor. And sometimes we have to be reminded that we have to simplify the language so that people understand. Because if you understand, then you can ask questions. You can ask questions and get your questions answered. And if you understand why we're recommending that you're doing something, we can have a conversation, and then you are more likely to follow through with why we're making certain recommendations.
Absolutely.
This is definitely true because I've certainly had a few conversations with her about mechanical things, and this is not my strength, you know. And I'm glad that you are in the science field because I'm more of a math girl myself. Science was not my highest score in school. I was very excited to see that when my husband was vaccinated, he got a little card that said he could dial in on this app on his phone and report his side effects. And he gets an alert every day and it says, you know, how are you feeling? Like, is your arm sore or whatever? And I thought that was really cool that, you know, you can choose, it's an optional thing, but you can choose to tell, you know, the CDC, how's your experience going? And I think that's really encouraging that they're collecting information about how we're all doing with the vaccines.
And,
Yes.
and
And
that's important. That's important because you want to gather that data, because if all of a sudden you start to get these significant reactions, then you have to look into things. So every vaccine that comes out, there is called a vaccine adverse reporting form that we as physicians will fill out if our patients report to us. When we're rolling out such a vaccine like this, which we haven't done, I don't know when the last time we had a massive vaccine
I was a little girl in polio.
polio.
polio, right? And that was in the
Yeah,
50s.
that was in the 50s. I don't want to say how old I am, but I'm old. So
So
poor
it's
guy.
been, it's literally been 70 years
It's
since
close.
that has been rolled out.
We're
So,
working on it.
we want to give people the opportunity to report. So I think that that's important too.
And I will say that a lot of people think that the vaccine trial stopped with administering the vaccine. No, there's a phase 4 where you continue to monitor the effects of the vaccine, monitor the side effects of the vaccine that people are reporting. And I would like to say, when I had my vaccine, I did have tenderness at my injection site for the first vaccine. And that lasted for about 2 days. I didn't have to take any Tylenol, Motrin. I was able to do my usual activities. My second vaccine that I had 2 days ago, the soreness was less than the first vaccine. However, I did have fatigue, and then that was gone after 2 days. And I would gladly take fatigue and soreness at the vaccine site than getting COVID and my lungs failing, and I have to get on a ventilator, and I possibly have a stroke and can't take care of myself and my family and my children, and or no longer being here. So I ask people to consider the risk and decide which risk you are willing to take. Are you willing to take the risk of potential side effects from the vaccine, which are nowhere near as significant as the complications of COVID, or are you willing to risk being exposed to COVID and the complications of COVID? So I ask people to assess, and it's an individual decision, and everyone should make that decision and have a conversation with their physician so they can make an educated decision. An educated decision. We're not changing your DNA. We're not putting a microchip in. We're not giving you COVID when we give the vaccine, when we administer the vaccine. So please consider it and use accurate information to make an informed decision.
And if we want to go back to, I don't think we'll ever get back to complete normalcy that we were used to in 2019. But if we want to start to make steps forward back to getting back in the workplace, being able to go to church and restaurants, and eventually our children being able to go back to school in a normal way that they used to go to school, the vaccine is the next most appropriate step for us to consider.
And also, and even when we're at work, we know that people's ability to be able to go to work is affected if they're exposed to COVID vaccine. I mean, exposed to the COVID virus. So that affects everybody's job and productivity. Because if your coworker is down, then you have to step up more. Which I mean, and we all do. We all work in team. A lot of us work in team arenas. So, but when one person is affected, but unfortunately with COVID, many people could be affected at one time, and that increases the workload for everybody. So again, it behooves us all to really consider to get this vaccine for our personal lives, for our work lives, so that we can move forward.
I think
And
our mutual interest is, to really love our neighbors by working in community, care for our families, care for our coworkers, care for our neighbors by taking this education and decision really seriously.
yes,
Absolutely.
we're all in this together. We're all in this together. When you vaccinate, if you make this decision to get vaccinated, you're vaccinating for yourself, your family, your friends, your community.
Yes, absolutely.
It's really great. It was so great to spend time with you. Maybe we'll get a real fireside chat when it's done.
Yes,
Real
yes.
fire.
Yes. And if I could just clarify too
Sure.
to your team,
Uh-huh.
I got the COVID vaccine also.
Right.
I got Moderna. I got the first one on December 30th, and I'm going to be getting my second one next week. And after my first vaccine, I had significant arm soreness, but still able to do my things. But I knew that I had gotten a shot there, and it hurt for about 2 days. But I was still able to go to work, take care of my patients, do all my usual things. And again, I will take that soreness versus the severe consequences of having actual COVID itself.
Yeah, me too. I got my shot. My arm was sore for 2 days, and I did an 8-mile run, and I'm very happy. So
Yeah.
nothing
Yes.
stopping me. So I'm not worried about the second shot either. And I think that it really is important to not just say it but do it. So
Absolutely.
great to lead the way, and you lead the way, the two of you, in so many ways. And I'm so grateful to you and to your parents for encouraging you. So
Thank you.
thank them too. And it was really, really great to spend time with you. And I'm sure our staff are going to be pretty excited to hear from you directly. So
Okay, great.
Thank you
Well,
for
thanks
having us.
for having us.
you're
You
welcome. Thank
know,
you.
we're always happy to get the word out, the accurate word,
Accurate word.
Yes.
to help people make decisions and feel comfortable with their decisions.
Great. So thanks and keep up the good work.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We
For having
appreciate
us.
the time.